Hi there, and welcome back to the Human Factor Security Podcast with me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe. I am so delighted to have today's guest on the show. I've been dying to speak to her for such a long time, and I finally managed to get it on. Very well known in the industry, but welcome to the show, Nicola Whiting, MBE.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've wanted to spend time with you like this for equally long. So, we're...
Oh, well, I'm flattered, Nick, I'm flattered. Now, you're the co-owner of Titania Group. You advise the UK government on tech and diversity, especially known for your wonderful work on neuro-diversity. And you're also a fellow graduate of the University of Liverpool, I see.
Yeah, although I did kind of posh Liverpool off at the side because I studied in Chester, and then they kind of lied in a Liverpool uni degree. And that was because I wanted to study theology, but I wanted desperately to do it with iconography, the study of religious art and the meaning behind things. Mm-hmm. And there are only really 3 places in the UK that really do that well, and Chester's one of them. Plus, they've got an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so bonus.
Don't be telling me all the great things about Chester.
Sorry.
Nicola. No, it's all great. They've got a wall.
They've got a wall.
And they're not that far from Liverpool. That's the main thing they've got going for them. I'm joking.
They haven't got a beautiful dock area like Liverpool has, and all of the lively lives.
So did you get over to Liverpool a lot when you were studying there then?
I did some, but coming from the kind of socioeconomic background I spent the time I wasn't studying often working. So I did like a couple of different jobs at the same time because I have a morbid fear of debt. So I was, and actually that was quite good because, when I finished my degree, I entered the workforce with a lot of quite useful experience that I could say, here's some successes. That was kind of cool.
And so, sorry, I need to dig into this because I bet no one's really spoken too much about it, but when we talk about iconography, was there specific things in Chester? Because it's got the Roman history and everything. Basically, if you're a kid in Liverpool, you get a school trip to Chester at least once in your life with a crayon and a piece of paper to do rubbings on walls and things. Was it, I mean, sorry, just tell me a little bit about it.
So iconography is the study of the meaning behind the images used in religion, basically. So a lot of it, we think about it like Christian iconography. So if you see a dove, for example, in a Christian picture, then that dove represents the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And certain colours represent purity. And if there are certain flowers, it represents things. And in medieval times, the language of flowers was much more common parlance. Yeah. So people would understand those meanings that had been built in. Mm-hmm. But I kind of wanted to look at early Christianity because we pinch a lot in Christianity. We nick stuff from paganism and other things.
Yeah, don't get me started, Nicola.
And
don't get me started. My family and friends, Nick. Christmas, Easter, that I just don't say anything to Jen. I went to Catholic schools, but I'm a radical atheist, I would suggest.
Fabulous. So I'm a radical Christian, but I'm not radically religious. Mm-hmm. So basically, to me, Jesus never went around going. The only time he ever threw anybody out was money changers out of the temple. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm a Christian, then I'm accepting of Buddhism, of atheism, of any religion that is about being good to people. Mm-hmm. I'm totally cool with that. And I'm of the opinion that if Jesus was a Jew, then I'm completely cool with all the religions that he learned from. And so I spent a lot of time doing iconography where I was studying, for example, a lot of the sun imagery and the light and things like that. A lot of religions have that, including Egyptian religions, because they had Ra, the sun god. So I was kind of looking at the icons, the imagery in comparative religions and going, there's quite a lot of stuff. And a lot of the early Christian designs had a lot of stuff in common with Islam and Islamic designs. Mm-hmm. So, that kind of melting pot of the Middle East that he would have been in and the Christians that then followed that has a huge amount of crossover that we kind of conveniently forget our history sometimes. And that isn't just in religion, it's in a lot of things.
Isn't it just? Yeah. Right? It really is. That, to me, this is really interesting though, because you wouldn't have thought that those type of qualifications and things would lead to the career that you've had. But then my degree didn't prepare me for what I went on. In fact, not really any of my sort of qualifications and degrees did. But in a way, I suppose that attention to detail, that interpretation, those are skills that you've brought through into what you do now. I mean, what sort of things did you do as your first kind of career moves? You spoke about work and sort of getting through and doing jobs, but
so I've not been a career butterfly, because there's quite a few jobs that I've been in and I've had them for like 10 years or 5 years or 6 years. But what I have done, I would say, is every job, from working in catering to a place called Mr. Cod, like really, to cardboard boxes and packaging, to selling cars, to whatever I've done. Head of a jewelry guild, the chairman of a jewelry guild, an award-winning jewelry designer. I've done all of those things.
I know.
What I've done is I've learned from every job. And that's a message that I often talk to people about in schools as well, when I'm mentoring, and say, it doesn't, don't feel like you have to go into your final career at age 12 or 15. Or
yes, you shouldn't have to know what you want. I always say
it's a journey, and your destination may not be visible from where you are right now. So, for example, all of that iconography, and I did English language and literature with that. So yeah, it was a joint degree in two subjects. All of that reading I did was really about, because books and things like that and religion, they're really about our human operating system, basically. They're about how people believe things, why they believe things, the sort of things people will do when they believe things, including walk to their deaths even.
Yeah.
And how people are inspired by literature. All of that stuff then went with me into a career in marketing, a career in sales, a career that has allowed me to have a lot of personal and financial and all that kind of growth, really stemmed from the lessons that I learned early on. So when I got into a career in car sales, for example, I was out selling people in London from a little dealership in Nottingham, to the extent that Smart in Germany came to Nottingham because they couldn't understand why there was this weird spike in sales randomly. And I had people from Germany come to the dealership saying, why are all these people buying from you? I would have people traveling from Scotland and from London to buy from me in Nottingham, and they couldn't understand why. The reason why was I created a club called Smart Maniacs, which is still going, because I spotted that the Smart Car Club, which was kind of, a lot of the stuff in there was kind of how to polish your car and how to look after your car in very traditional ways. But a lot of people that were attracted to smart cars wanted them to be red with black spots and look like a ladybird, or have the Pink Panther on the side, or be yellow and be a bumblebee. And, it attracted a lot of people that either wanted to customize them or modify them, or feel that they were part of their personality and express themselves through what they drove. And so I created Smart Maniacs, and we did stuff like, we went to the London to Brighton run and, did all kinds of fun things. And I did a massive charity event that raised money for cancer research, where we had Russ Swift, the stunt car driver that was, involved with the stick and stuff like that. And what I did was I created a bank of trust, because people knew that I wasn't there to sell them stuff. I was there with them as somebody that was an enthusiast that happened to work in a dealership. And so I helped them realize their dreams. I sold them a vanilla car, but I also said, and by the way, here are some people that I trust, that if you want it red with black spots on, they probably can help you. And, I would be very transparent and say, if you want to remap your car so it'll go a bit faster, then I'm not going to stop you doing that, but you need to know it's going to invalidate this part of your warranty, and you need to know this is how much a new engine will cost, because Smart won't give you a new one. And Smart were horrified in some ways. But what that led them to do is realize that there was a demand that they hadn't recognized. And so from that, they then created the global phenomenon that was customized smart cars that they did in a higher end range. So from my little place in Nottingham, I built a group that's still going 15 years probably later, and created that change globally. But that wasn't what I set out to do. What I set out to do was to meet people's needs. And that's how Titania's thrived. That's what we still do. We're like, what do you need now? What do you need in the future? Where is the industry going? How can we help you get there?
Well, let's get to Titania in a minute, but I just want to say, when were you doing that smart car thing?
Nottingham was where I was.
But when?
Peterborough.
When?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna say, I don't know, like I'm really bad with dates, probably 15 years ago.
Because that to me predates the concept of building a community, say online, like a tribe. What you were doing was building a tribe of people who had a common interest. And you were looking exactly what you just said about Titania. And I always wondered whether there was a literary connection with that name and with the hint. I always wondered about that because it struck me that there would be. It wouldn't be accidental. But that what you've done there is you definitely tapped in to a characteristic of your customer that now is part of the book, isn't it? It's the PR book, is to create a tribe or create a.
And that's how I ended up the chairman of a jewelry guild. I was partly creating the tribe that introduced precious metal clay, which is a material into the UK. And I was one of the first advocates for that type of material because I love technology.
Well, that was what I was going to get to. So let's get on to what Titania do now. Because you said you know, why don't we talk a little bit about what the aims of the business are and what the type of things that you guys actually do? I always say guys, by the way, we're not supposed to. I've been told off for it, and I thought, it's just a colloquialism.
So where it started, and by the way, Titania is derived from the space side. It's actually a moon around one of the planets. That's where it came from.
But that was named in and of itself after
the fairy queen. Yes, Titania.
So I just wondered when you said, sorry, interested, but when you said you did English, I did English language and literature. That was my first degree from Liverpool Uni. And so when you spoke then about flowers and symbolism and herbs and things, I was thinking, okay, so I'm getting Shakespeare, I'm getting Rosemary for Remembrance, I'm getting all this, because I totally can, it's right up my alley, that.
Yeah, right up my alley too. So we started off so we did Marketing 101 by accident. And it kind of stemmed from how Ian works and how I work. So Ian founded Titania. He's now my husband. That isn't how we started. I joined as a sales bird. And the way that we work together is, I say that he's Walt Disney and I'm Roy Disney. So we're very much yin and yang. We're very complementary to each other. Mm-hmm. So Ian is constantly innovating, doesn't know how not to have ideas. To the stage, I know this is being recorded, he's going to kill me, but we had to make a rule that if we were both naked, he wasn't allowed to pitch me ideas, just because otherwise it never stopped being work at home. You know, that
can be an issue.
True. And he woke me up once in the middle of the night because he was dreaming about an idea and he was talking in his sleep. And because I'm an implementer, what happened is he woke me up. He was like, duh. And then I started asking him questions about this idea. I was a bit mad, he woke me up, but I was like, I'm used to this by now. And then he started snoring. I'm like, because my brain was now on implementation mode. So anyway. So he founded it because he was a pen tester. He was a Czech team leader. So very experienced pen tester. And he had to go out and do a job. And he was asked to audit 50 firewalls. And as a pen tester, that's a lot of looking through code. And then it's a lot of report writing. And that, it's like half a day to a day, depending upon the complexity of the rules on those firewalls. Mm. So he instead said, well, actually, instead of doing that with my time, because that's 30 days work, I can write something that will automate that. And so we did. That's how it started. It was actually a tool to do a job that he had to do because he was saying, this is dumb, I can make this faster. Now, most people wouldn't think like that, but he does. And pen testers often do, because I tend to put little characters in my head of people. And the pen testers for me are always like, you know, the DuckTales and the gyro screw loose. And they would rather, and I don't mean that badly, because I married one, I love the community. But it's like, we're talking about people that would rather buy a £5 circuit board and spend a week building something than buy something for 30 quid that would already do it, because it's the creation, it's the generation that is exciting to a lot of that kind of archetype. And I love finding tribes of people and finding how to engage with them. And so he built this, and then all of his mates went, oh, I'd like a bit of that. And he carried on his merry way, kind of almost giving this thing to people. And then somewhere along the line, somebody said, actually, we'd quite like to license it. And suddenly he went, oh, I've got a business. How did that happen?
Wow.
And so that's how it started. So if you look at a marketing, a product life cycle, normally you do the other way. You find a market opportunity and then you build it. Ian found a need that he had and built it and found a market opportunity. So it was the other way. And then what happened is, if you think about, again, marketing 101, what's your most ideal thing that you would do? You would create a body of referral people. So what did we do accidentally? We created something that pen testers, who are trusted advisors, seen as having a huge amount of authority and who really know their stuff because they do, suddenly went, this stuff's really cool. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's generating all this stuff. It's accurate. I can have it on my Windows machine. I can have it on my Linux machine. I can run it on my Apple Mac. You know, I can do all of this stuff. And it doesn't leave any footprint, because they're not allowed to mess around with things. So we built something that was secure by design, hugely flexible and accurate, because we were building it for people that needed that. So then over time, I then sort of joined the company and went, well, how can we get this out to more people? And so we've Titania for many, many years has been quite responsive, because people have come to us because we've got this referral network of people that go, this does what it says. And they, you know, one thing about our industry is people move from job to job.
Yeah.
So, you know, when they go, this actually does what it says on the can, and then they move, they take it with them. And the other people still want to keep it, because they don't want to go back to having loads of false positives and negatives and having to do all that work. So that's where we've been up to now. And then really, really exciting, in December last year. So we put in place some brilliant people that we kind of bumped into. So we built these relationships with people, and then they come and join our company. We were really lucky. So we had a guy called Phil Lewis, who was the former CEO of Telesoft, come to join us. And Ian and I were breaking at the seams at the point he did that, because we've always grown and learnt as we've gone along. But it gets to the point with a company when you've got 50 people where you're like, look, we need somebody that's already done this, because you know, how fast can we learn and make mistakes? And so Phil came on board, and he originally came on board as the CFO, and he's a really brilliant guy, and he's got a load of experience. And he took Telesoft, which was a company he was the former CEO for, from like, I don't know, 5 or 6 million to in the multiples of tens of millions. And we're like, this is the sort of experience we want. We want somebody that understands all that. And he does. And then he brought in other people that helped as well. So we had Keith Driver join us, who's the CTO of Raytheon, which is a fabulous person with experience, again, loads of experience of building proper stuff for the sort of enterprise customers that we have, but a different type of scale. So we've got a solution that was on-demand use, which really suited pen testers and would then be used by testing teams. But what those guys did was say, actually, we could build this to embed into enterprise systems. So instead of finding problems and then fixing them, you don't have the problems in the first place, because it becomes part of your overall process. So then you've got the red and the blue team.
Okay.
So truly a purple product.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
So suddenly we've in that process of purple product, and they said, to do this properly, we need a significant amount of money. So Ian and I went, go, and we went out to market, and we had a lot of people wanting to be our investor, because we'd always said, no, 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 no. And we had a fabulous company called Foresight invest in us, and they've also brought some fabulous experience to our board, and we've learned a lot. And Ian and I said, right, we've graduated. Our team are more experienced than we are. We can still offer, you know, various helps, but realistically, we've got to that stage where our company, if they were our child, is off to university, and your parents don't come with you to university. You have to do that next step, that next evolution, that next big jump yourself. So we're now investors kind of in our company, in the leadership team are very much doing the, how do we transform this to that level where we can go out and do all of this.
How does it feel to be there, though? I mean, what if they do something that you, I mean, obviously you're advising it, but does it feel strange to have this entity now be apart from you to a certain extent?
It felt strange, but it doesn't feel strange now. I mean, I'm I'm autistic, so like change for me is a big thing. And they, you know, the team are very good in that they understood that, and they were gentle as we managed it. But the reality is that, isn't that the goal of any leader? Like, the reason I'm where I am is my goal has always been replacing myself. So, you know, you train the next person until you're not needed, because how can you free yourself to do what your next big thing might be if you're still needed? And that's a thing that I think a lot of leaders fail to do, because they're frightened that if they make themselves replaceable, they might be replaced. But that's where, like, imposter syndrome lives and all that stuff. And, you know, we're all building on making sure we don't have that. You know, I often have said the only thing worse than training somebody and having them leave is not training them and having them stop. And if you can't do that for yourself, then you've kind of failed as a leader. So, you know, it's important that we were able to be freed up, because, you know, I've got a lot of personal goals too, most of which are now in the realm of, okay, let me take all this experience I've got, let me take all this learning I've got, let me now use this time to help open up proper pathways to change, so that we can have inclusion in our industry and we can benefit from all of the stuff that we need in that. So
that was where I was going next, because I was going to say, I'd imagine that going forward, you mentioned it's a journey, it's not a destination, and I know you, or I'm assuming that you feel that way about diversity, and particularly neurodiversity, of which you're a huge champion in the industry. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about what you see and what you want to, what would good look like and what would great look like for you.
So the ultimate goal for me, I always call it my Star Trek world. So human beings, I mean, I know that you know this, because you know we've got a 150,000-year-old operating system, and we you know, we run really old operating system software in our brain, and that's why so many things work, and why I get really knocked off when people blame the end user, because blaming the end user for having their brain isn't just not right. And, you know, people will fall foul of phishing and will do all those things. But essentially, my perfect world would be Star Trek world. And sometimes, you know, when everybody has dark moments, and sometimes I wish the aliens would invade, because then humanity would just go, oh, those are the other people. Now we're all the humanity people. Because that's where we are. What we always seem to want, an other.
Yeah.
And because we have no other, we find it in ourselves, and that's not productive for humanity to reach its peak. And I know that's a big old concept, but when you drill that concept down to just, let's say cybersecurity is two biggest things, because we really only do two things: we make new shit and we protect the shit we made. That's it. Everything we do falls into those two things: innovation and protection. Now, you can't innovate fully if everybody in the room has the same background experience roughly and the same kind of thought processes roughly, because you're just going to get one set of ideas. It may be faster, but it's not necessarily going to be the best option for innovation. So not having diverse thought, and by neurodiversity, by the way, I don't just mean neurotypical people and neurodivergent people or neuroatypical people. I mean the diversity of thought that happens when you've got different ethnicities and belief systems and backgrounds and socioeconomic things, everything in the room, so that we're properly diverse. Mm-hmm. You have that. And then you've got the hardwired diversity of thought by typical and atypical people. But that's when you get true innovation, is when you've got proper diversity. And then you look at the other thing, the protection side. Well, Sun Tzu wrote that Art of War. And, you know, I'm quite a big fan of the Art of War, because any book that's older than the Bible, but still being taught in West Point, it's got to be pretty good. And he said, you know, I'm paraphrasing Sun Tzu here, you know, to be able to defeat your enemy, you've got to understand them. And I don't think anybody would argue with that. You know, you can't really win something unless you can put yourself in the other person's shoes, or even meet in the middle in a negotiation, unless you really understand what is driving the other person. And, you know, attackers come in all flavors. You know, they come from different backgrounds, they come from different sexualities, they come from different ethnicities, they come from different thought types. And if we just stack up the same people in a room, then it's no wonder really the seesaw's in the wrong direction. And so we often keep looking at technological answers to the same problems that we've had for decades. And I'm like, why do we keep looking at the people falling down the stairs? Why don't we fix the ice at the top? And the ice at the top is, we haven't got the people bit right that are solving the problems, defending our networks, and coming up with new ideas. And that's borne out time and time again. And the challenge that I've got, because I'm autistic, because I think in connected ways, and that's why I'm quite often drawn to strategy, and why that tends to be the sort of post I get asked about, and why I've done papers on AI, is if we bake in discrimination by design because we haven't got the right people on the table, and we're designing the things that will control our future society, we won't end up with Star Trek world, we'll end up with 1984. And that is quite concerning. So I'm definitely wanting to use whatever influence, thought processes and energy I've got to try and help those people that are in that mindset and understand that's how big a thing. This isn't about a social exercise. This is about what society we want as a human race and what we're prepared to do for it.
Wow. You know what, I'm sitting listening, you know, everything about the way that you describe that is just so compelling, from the energy, because you give this cool, calm energy. Now, I know you might not think that, you might disagree with me, but I always get like there's a calmness now. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine anyone better to kind of lead us towards it. I mean, and you've been recognised. Now, you know I'm obsessed with this, but I can believe it because you're so awesome. But it still gets me that you are the second MBE I've had on my show. Philip Ingram, MBE, has been on my show. And I have Nicola Whiting, MBE. Tell me about why you got that award. What was and just the goss? Give us the tea on getting to the palace and meeting Prince Charles, and didn't they even retweet it as well? I saw you sort of tweeted, and it was a tweet from. Yeah. This is here's the prince giving Nicola her awards. Yeah. He talks about it all the time.
So it was the second time that I'd been fortunate enough to go to the palace. So the first time was Titania won an award for innovation for its stuff, and I got to meet the Queen then. And I am a huge fan of the royal family, and particularly of the Queen. You know, when anybody, whatever else, because everybody's human, even the Queen, whatever else, you know, for somebody to devote their life like that has got to be, you know, a huge amount of respect. Do you want some gossip on the Queen and how I met her?
I want to know what she smells like, which makes me sound like a stalker. But like, I always wondered if did she wear like I mean, I suppose you could look up what perfume she wears and stuff, but like, what's it like to be in that orbit?
So I'll tell you a little story, which probably tells you a little bit about me as well. So you know that I'm from the background I'm from, which, you know, there were 6 of us at one point in a 3-bedroomed house, and it is definitely the pre-version of the socio-economic change on estates, council estates. And so I've always been interested in all kinds of people, and I've got immense respect for anybody that is willing to lay down their life for the country and other people. So, you know, people in the military, whilst I might not agree necessarily with all wars, I do respect people that are prepared to go into the military for us. And so we were in this big reception room, and there are certain things they do with the badge, so you kind of know whether you're going to be in the Queen's reception room or not. And I was in the not category, and I was internally devastated, but obviously hugely grateful that I was there, but internally like, oh, I'm not going to spend proper time with the Queen. I'm just going to maybe see her in the same room, like watching her on telly. It's going to be like, oh. So anyway, I got over myself, and I saw this young black guy, and he was sort of standing to one side and very military. And I was like, oh, I wonder what he does here. So, you know, everybody else is busy schmoozing and passing business cards, and I was like, oh, I wonder what he does. So I went up to start talking to him, and he said, well, you know, have you served? And he was telling me where he'd served and in what countries. And I said, oh, so what do you do? He said, I'm the Queen's equerry. And I had no idea what a Queen's equerry is. So I was like, well, what does a Queen's equerry do? And he said, well, basically, I kind of arrange for this particular thing. I do lots of things, but for this particular thing, I kind of arrange where people will be in the room when she comes through and who she's first introduced to. I'm like,
I want one of them.
That's amazing. I said, I love the fact that you're in such a position of responsibility, and, you know, in making sure that smooth transition for her. I love that. And he said, would you like to meet the Queen? I'm like, oh yes. So
are you kidding? Yeah.
So basically, he said, well, if you stand there when she first comes through, and you can be in the line of the people that she meets.
Nicola, this is social engineering.
But that wasn't, you know, my intent was to just meet this fabulous fab person. And so what happened was, the first person that he introduced the Queen to was Ian and myself. And I'm sitting there, and Ian's sort of saying what Titania does, and she's just about to come to me, and all that I can think of is, what's the most interesting thing that I can say that the Queen might think is interesting, not about me or anything else, but what about what we do that is interesting to her and what she's going to be interested in. And so she asked me, what do you do? I'm not going to do the Queen's accent.
No, don't.
I won't. But she said, you know, what do you do? And I said, well, Titania helps defend your nation's cyber borders and our allies' cyber borders.
Oh. Oh, good answer, Nicola.
And then she was like, then she talked a little bit about GCHQ, and the phrasing was, the questions that she then asked were very astute. I mean, really astute, very, very switched on, and very, very well researched and read. And, you know, I did do some research afterwards, because I was like, wow, she really knows about all of this stuff. And I learned that, you know, she's up a godforsaken o'clock reading things every single day of her life about
it's in the briefing.
All of the briefing things, and that's what she does. It's like, I don't do that.
Amazing. I mean, to be fair to you and I and everyone who doesn't, we don't have someone put that in that kind of digestible format. But to be fair, would you be as tenacious as she is to read it?
But
there's a cyber element to the briefing.
So that was the first time that I went to Buckingham Palace, and then the second time, the MBE, was. So the first time, the first thing is, when I got the letter, I initially thought I might be being socially engineered. So I'm like,
I've been asked to do certain places, and I've gone, someone's taken the absolute proverbial here.
So yes, I got the letter. Then I found out through the letter, and then I found out that there were a few people in our organisation that had been asked about me for the process of being recommended, and they'd kept it quiet for not said anything to me at all. So it was just like a complete. But the MBE was for services to international trade and diversity, because as well as speaking a lot on diversity and doing stuff like that, I also do a lot of work on the future of AI and the future of our industry and where it's going and technology pieces. And I do a lot of mentoring for startups, particularly about how to go overseas and how to build those kind of relationships, which is so crazy because you've got an autistic woman talking to people about how to build relationships. It's a bit like somebody in a wheelchair teaching people how to run, but it's kind of, but actually from the point of view of, I often think about myself as a Vulcan in a human world. So for me to be successful, I've learned how the humans operate so that I can use my own energy to make it easier for the people that can't use their energy, which is really common for successful people that are neurodivergent. We have to use energy to meet the other people in their comfort zone because we're not there yet.
I know, because I've been reading articles and things that you've written. I didn't even know some of the famous people. I didn't know Richard Branson.
Yeah.
For example, you've taught me that today. So well, Nicola, I mean, you calm me down so I can understand. You make me step back and really listen and really understand why you'd just be a fabulous ambassador for trade and for the industry. Can't tell you how grateful I am that you could spare some time just to chat to me. I just really had one more question for you, and you can take this and answer this however way you want. But I just wondered, the question that kept coming to me when I knew I was going to grab you was, what's being forgotten that matters? And I know that you think very carefully about the words, but I don't know why that question was the question that came to me the most, but that's what came to me. What's being forgotten that matters, whether that's business, the industry?
So there's two kind of points to that. So I want people to go away with something really useful to them. And I think it's really hard because you sound a bit trite if you go, well, the thing that matters is the people. And when I talk to people, when I do mentoring, particularly in technology, we get so hung up about what does the thing do? What does the technology do? And we get all into our gyro screw loose head. and sometimes we forget that we have got that 150,000-year-old brain, and everybody has. And that we really need to understand all people are looking for, and not in a selfish way, the what's in it for me. All people are looking into how can I serve my family better? How can I be part of that team? What can I do for my organization? I don't know a single person that hasn't got some major challenge that doesn't think like that. That isn't looking to make things better for people around them. And I think quite often people get so into the trenches of the tasks that they have to do that they forget that it's about service, and it's about making it easy for people to do what they naturally want to do, which is help.
Yeah.
And I've got an example of that. So I was mentoring at one of the accelerators, and I had a guy, and he had quite a technical product. And you naturally go, well, what does it do? Blah, blah, blah. And he kind of explained it. And I said, look, I'm really sorry. I'm not hugely technical, although some people would say I am, but I'm not really understanding what your unique benefit is, or what your selling proposition is, or what it is that you really do for people with this thing. And he's like, look, well, if you don't understand it, then you're probably not my customer, is what he said.
Oh.
So if somebody had been selling to me and I hadn't been in a mentoring position at that point, I'd have gone, you're a jerk and I'm not going to spend my time on you because I have better things to do. But at that particular point, I wanted to deliver on my commitment to mentor this person. So what I said instead was, right, I said, you may be right that I am not your customer. However, like many people, I have somewhere in the region of 250 immediate contacts. And in actual fact, I've got a network of over 10,000 people, many of which will be your customers because I have very senior people that I happen to know in government and industry and everywhere else. I said, if you can't communicate to me what it is you do, none of those are going to pop in my head as somebody that I might potentially be able to introduce you to. I said, and if you can't leverage the networks of the people that you integrate with, you're really just hoping to bump into somebody that desperately wants your product. And that is not the recipe. That is not the recipe for success. That is not the recipe for success. Now, if I was going to introduce you to somebody, what I'm doing is I'm using my personally earned tokens with that person and spending them on you. That's what an introduction is. It's you using your tokens, your personal reputational tokens on behalf of somebody else. And if I'm not completely assured that you're going to benefit the person I'm introducing you to, you don't get that either. I said, so the biggest lesson I can give you today is find a way to tell people that aren't your customer what is the benefit that you'll bring to somebody. Because then you will leverage the power of everybody else's network. And that is one of the biggest business lessons that you can give to anybody. And all that boils down to go giving. And what can I do to help you? And the natural tendency for people to be reciprocal.
Oh, well, it is. It's a brilliant lesson. And of course, we will put up under the show notes for this, and at the end, all the ways that you can get in touch with Cyber Go Giver herself.
Well, thank you,
Nick. And we've come to the end of our time, but it's just, I knew it'd be amazing talking to you. It's just a masterclass in kind of business and in empathy and in grace, and I am so pleased that you could come on my show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. I feel like I want to give a book list to all the people as well. That
absolutely, my listeners absolutely love book lists. We stopped doing it for a little while, to be honest with you, for reasons we can't go into. But what would you recommend?
So in terms of, we give out a book to all of our team members when they join, which is called The Go Giver by Bob Berg, which is really about service. And it's kind of 5 principles. And the one that I like the most is that your true worth or your true value is how much more you give in value than you receive in payment. And your worth on this planet is how many people you can do that for, which is all about leveraging networks and delivering value. And then the other ones are a group of books by a guy called Gino Wickman, which are called Traction and Rocket Fuel and all of those. And basically that's a primer. If anybody is in a startup business or they want to check that their business is doing all the basics, then get the Traction series. It's truly nothing that's rocket sciencey at all, but everything put in a really easy to understand way of right people in the right seat, what kind of metrics you should use, how to set a business up, and all the different components of a business, including serving people and delivering value. So that's really cool. And another book by Bob Berg, which is called Endless Referrals, which is like the big version of The Go Giver, because it's all about service. I think if you got the principles and practices of the Traction series and the ethos and methodology of Endless Referrals, I believe that unless you had such a shocking product that it would fall apart, you would have a genuinely successful business. And there are very few things I say that, but I genuinely believe if you could have at the very least a lifestyle business and possibly a hugely successful business that would make you very, very rich if you mastered those 2 sets of books.
Well, we will definitely put them up. We've been flashing them up across the screen. We'll put them in the show notes. It's just been a delight, Nicola. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm so glad we finally did this.
Thank you.